Hello everyone. We will just give everyone a couple minutes to join, just to make sure everyone is joined, and then we will start today's webinar on a foundation paper. We're going to go through Edexcel, very similar though to AQA Maths. Maths, AQA and Edexcel are very similar, so you don't need to worry too much about it. If you're AQA, don't worry too much about it because it is very similar. So we will just give a couple minutes for people to join and then we will get started. This is also going to be a non-calculator paper as well, so don't worry, you don't need your calculator or anything. The other thing I will also say is if you do see a question where you struggle a little bit with it, or you don't understand the concept fully, I would say take it to your personal tutor so they can explain the concept to you in more detail, because these questions should be fairly, as I said, if you're doing the foundation paper, it should be, well, the starting questions should be fairly straightforward, but as we go through the paper and progress, it should get a little bit more difficult. And after every question, the starting questions will do a few, but after every question there'll be a little bit of time for anyone to have any questions in the comments. So if you have any questions, I'll wait around 30 seconds after the question. So if you have any questions, then please feel free to write them in the comments. But I think we can start now. So the first thing is all about time management, remember, because you're only allowed, unless you're given extra time, you're only allowed 1 hour and 30 minutes in these exams. As you can see, it is out of 80 marks. So you have an hour and a half and 80 marks. An hour and a half, which is also 90 minutes and 80 marks. So you can equate that to around a minute a mark. So if you come up to a question, which is 3 marks, you should spend around 3 minutes on that. Don't spend too much longer because you don't want to lose time and miss out on questions later because you've run out of time. So you can use the kind of concept that you get a minute for each mark. So if we look at the first question, we're going to do the first question. We'll do the first 2 questions because they're fairly quick. Remember, 1 mark, so we should only spend 1 minute on it. So the first question is converting a percentage into a decimal. So this says write 25% as a decimal. So remember our conversions to decimals from percentages? Essentially all we have to do is put a 0 in front of this and then points, and then in this case it would just be 0.25. There's nothing else more to it. So to ever convert a percentage to a decimal, you put a 0 in front of it and then point, and then whatever this number is after it, you put it exactly like that, and then make sure we always put our answers in our answer boxes. So 0.25. The next question is, here are the first 4 even numbers. So we have 4 even numbers here. We have 2, 4, 6, 8. And it says find the 10th even number. So there's a couple ways you can do this. There's a long method and there's a quick method. If we want to make sure we secure the kind of marks, remember, so this is the first number, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth, and then we need to get up to the 10th. So as you can see, what's happening here is it's going up in 2s. So it's going up in 2s, 2. So the next number will be 10. That will be the 5th one. Next number will be 12. You should probably already know what the number is going to be by now. But if we go through this, so that's the 5th number. That's the 6th number. Then we're going to have 14, 16, 18, and finally 20. And as we can see, 20 would be the 10th number because here is the 7th number, 8th, 9th, and then 10th. So this would be the 10th number, so it would be 20. You can also use maybe the nth term here. You can also use the nth term, find the gap, which in this case the gap is 2. So you could also say 2n. And then to find the 10th number, you substitute 10 in instead of n. So 2 times 10, and that gets you 20. Okay. Does anyone have any questions after those 2 first questions? If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Okay, we should be good to move on to question number 3, 4, and 5 now. Again, these are going to be fairly quick quick questions. Remember, they're only worth one mark, so 1 minute. So change 15 centimeters to millimeters. We should know that 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. Or remember that 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. So to get to 15 centimeters, what you have to do is you have to do 10 times by 15. And we should know what 10 times 15 is, because when you times by 10, you just add on a 0. So that would be 150 millimeters. So all we do is we just do 10 times 15. 15 times 10, as it's times in by 10, you just add a 0 on, which is 150 millimeters. Next one is write down a multiple of 9 that is between 20 and 30. So think about a multiples of 9. Obviously, we start with 9, then we go 18, then we go 27. Number between 20 and 30, 27. So that would be here. So a multiple of 9 that is between 20 and 30 would be 27. Obviously, next one up would be 36, but that would be above. The next one says work out 500 plus 145. So here you can just know the answer. So here the answer would obviously be 645. If you want to, though, use the column method, because you don't want to lose any marks just because you're rushing questions. So if you need to use the column method, you still should be able to use the column method inside 1 minute. 145. Add these two numbers together. 5 plus 0, 5. 4 plus 0, 4. 5 plus 1, 6. So as you can see, we get 645. Are there any questions on those three? Okay, fantastic. So moving on to question number 6. So this is where we use our minutes per mark. So this is 3 marks. So we can spend roughly 3 minutes on this question. So this says, David hires a car for 10 days. He pays £45 each day. He also pays £30 for insurance. David pays with 10 £50 notes. Work out how much change he should get. So first of all, if he pays with 10 £50 notes, that means that he has spent £500. So all we do there is we do 50 times by 10, because it's 50 notes, 10 of them. So we do 50 times 10 to get 500. So he has spent £500. So now we're going to see how much his cost. Well, he's paid. He's not necessarily spent, sorry. We should actually say paid there instead. We should say he's paid, because he's not spent that, because what he's spent is what we're going to calculate now. So he's paid 500. So now let's have a look at what he spent. So it says he pays £45 for each day. We know he's there for 10 days. So this would be 45 times by 10. And we should know again, when you times by 10, you add a 0 onto the 45. So this would be £450. So he spends £450 each day. He also pays £30 for insurance. So that means we're going to plus £30 onto £450. Add these together. 0, 5 plus 3, 8. 4 plus nothing would be 4. So as we can see, he spent 480. However, he paid £500. So as we can see there, a difference of £20. So how much change would he get? He would get £20 in change. We would just do 500 minus 480. Again, that was a 3-mark question, so it should have roughly taken us around 3 minutes. You can obviously also do it quicker. If you can do it quicker, that's even better. But that's just the kind of the timings it should kind of take you. Does anyone have any questions there? Okay, fantastic. So we should move on to the next one now. So the next question involves using your ruler and your protractor. So it involves using your ruler and your protractor. So remember to always bring your ruler and protractor to your exams with you, unless your school provides them, but still probably the best thing is to take your own. So if we look at a question like this, so I've already put the protractor and the ruler on here. So it says here is an accurately drawn triangle. So we know this is to measure. This shape is to measure. Then it says measure the length of the side PQ. What side is PQ? The side PQ is this side here. So as we can see, PQ is this bottom length here. Whenever it says PQ, it means from those bottom lengths. So the size of PQ, and essentially what we do is we grab our ruler, remember it's drawn to size, and then here we're just going to have to make our ruler a little bit bigger. And as we can see, in centimeters, so maybe if it was this big ruler like that, what we'd do is then zoom in, and what we can see, make sure zero's on the starting line, and as we can see, it goes to here on our ruler, in which case that would be 4.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in which case it would be 4.9 centimeters. Remember again, always take your ruler into your exam with you. This is drawn to scale. So whatever number you get on your ruler, you put down as your answer. Usually it's a decimal. Remember, your big lines are your centimeter lines. In between these are all millimeters. So this is 1 millimeter, 2, 3, etc. So this would be 4.9 centimeters. Okay, we don't need our ruler anymore, so we can remove our ruler. The next question is, what type of angle is marked at X? So this is our testing. So this is testing our knowledge on types of angles. So remember, our types of angles we have is acute, is right angle, is obtuse, is angles on a straight line, and is reflex angles. As we can see, the type of angle marked X, we can see that it's below 90 degrees. We can see that this angle is below 90 degrees because remember, 90 degrees is a right angle. So 90 degrees would be like this. And as we can see, this angle is less than 90 degrees. So when an angle is less than 90 degrees, it is called an acute. It is called an acute angle. So an acute angle is between 0 and 90 degrees. When it gets to 90 degrees, that's called a right angle. Anything above that is an obtuse angle up to 180, which is a straight line. And then anything above 180 is called a reflex angle. Fantastic. And now we actually have to measure, as we can see in part C, it actually says now measure the size angle marked X. So to measure the size, we use our protractor. Again, make sure you bring this with you to your exam. And to measure this size, angle X, what we have to do is this point of the protractor, we have to put on the point. So we take our protractor, we put that on the point there. Make sure it's as neat as possible, so like that. And then as we can see, then we use the protractor, use the degrees, use the outside ones here, not the inside ones. The inside ones is if you're starting over here and go to 0 to 180. So we use the outside ones. And as we can see, it goes to here. As we can see, 30 is here, and they go up in one, so 31, 32. So the angle in this question would be 32 degrees. Again, these were all worth 1 mark. A total of 3 marks you can spend on this whole question. Each is worth 1 mark, so you should be spending 1 mark on the individual parts and 3 marks in total on this question. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Any questions about this, remember, take your protractor and ruler to your exam with you if you need it. Okay. If no one has any questions, we can move on to question number 8. This is a graph question, and as we can see, in part A, it says write down the coordinates of the point A. So we have to write down the coordinates of this point here. What do we know about coordinates? We have to write the x coordinate first and the y coordinate second. So if we look at the x coordinate, it would be 3. And then if we look at the y coordinate, it would be 1. So the coordinates of point A is 3-1 or 3, 1. Next question, it says, on the grid, mark with a cross the point 3, -4, label this point B. So we have to now look on our graph and label this point. Remember again, we do the x-axis first. So we go 3 on the x-axis, which is here. Then we go 4 on the minus 4 on the y-axis, which is down here. So our point would be here. That would be our second mark. And then to get our third mark, it says write down the coordinates of the midpoint AC. So what does midpoint mean? Midpoint means the middle point between A and C. So what does that mean? We're going to have to draw a line between them. So we get a line and we draw a line between A and C. So we draw a line like so. Okay, what we then do, make sure it's as neat as possible. We then can do this a couple ways. There's a few ways you can do this question. You can either then maybe draw a triangle. What you can maybe do is draw a triangle between these points. And then what we do with this is we say it goes down by 2 and it goes across by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that means the midpoint will be down 1 and across 3. So it'll be down 1 and then across 3, 1, 2, 3. So our midpoint would be at that cross. So our midpoint would be 0, 2. The other way you can also do it is count from A to C, how many squares you go across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 squares you go across. So obviously in the middle of that would be 3. Fantastic. And again, that would be all 3 marks for this question. Again, you have to just write your coordinates though. So our coordinates would be x again first, so 0, and then y, which is 2. So our coordinates would be 0, 2. Again, on that question, you should spend 3 minutes, a minute for each question, for each segment of the question, I guess you could say. Okay, fantastic. So does anyone have any questions at all there? Okay, fantastic. So moving on to question number 9. This is a bar chart question. And this says, Millie collects stickers of sports players. She only has stickers of tennis players, football players, and cricket players. The incomplete bar chart shows information about the number of stickers Millie has. So we've got the stickers here about Millie. So she has tennis players, football players, and cricket players. And it says Millie has a total of 40 stickers. Complete the bar chart. 3 marks here, so we get 3 minutes. So we obviously need to have a bar for the cricket players. We know that there's 40 in total. We know that tennis players is 12. And if we look at football players, it's between 16 and 18, which would be 17. So what we would do first here is we'd do 16 plus 17, 12 plus 17, sorry, to get the total of tennis and football player stickers. So if we add that, 10 plus 10 would be 20, 7 plus 2 would be 9, so that would be 29. As we know it's 40 stickers in total, we would then do 40 minus 29, minus these from each other. 0 minus 9, we obviously can't do that, so we've got to take 1 off the 4, change it to a 3, bring the 1 over. 10 minus 9, which would be 1, 3 minus 2, which would be 1. So as we can see, it's 11 stickers for cricket players. So go up to the number 11. Obviously, we can't see number 11 on the y-axis, but obviously it's between 10 and 12. So it would be here. Then we draw our bar all the way down like the other two. And that's how we draw a bar chart for cricket players. Okay, fantastic. So is there any questions there at all? If anyone has any questions, remember to write them in the comments and I can get back to. But if no one has any questions, there is also a part B for this question. It says, what fraction of the 40 stickers are stickers of tennis players? This says write a fraction. It also says give your fraction in its simplest form. So that means we're going to have to get a fraction and then we're going to have to simplify it. So first of all, on top of a fraction is always what we're looking for. So what we're looking for here is tennis players. Tennis players, as we can see, is 12. Then on the denominator of a fraction goes everything else. So everything else that's on the denominator goes on the bottom, and the total is 40. So we have 12 over 40. We then need to simplify this fraction. There's a way you can simplify it just straight away, but that's sometimes a little bit hard to do. So first of all, what we can do is, as both numbers are even, we can divide it by 2 to get 6 over 20. Again, both numbers are even, so we can divide it by 2 and get 3 over 10. And then to double check if it's in the simplest form, there should be no number that can go into 3 and 10, in which case there isn't. The quickest way would have been to do divide by 4 straight away. 12 divided by 4 is equal to 3, and 40 divided by 4 is equal to 10. So it's, in its simplest form, is 3 over 10. And that's part B. There is also a part C and D for this question. So total, this is worth, the whole question is worth 7 marks. So that gives us the freedom, I guess, of spending 7 minutes on this question to get all the marks here. And what this one says is, it says, Ewan also collects stickers. This has nothing to do with part A and B. This is separate from part A and B, but it's all part of the same question. So Ewan also collects stickers. He only has large stickers and small stickers. For Ewan's stickers, the number of large stickers to the number of small stickers is 5 to 4. Then it says, write down the fraction of Ewan's stickers that are large stickers. Again, we have to write a ratio as a fraction. So again, on top of the fraction, we always put what we're looking for, which is large stickers. It says large stickers to small stickers, so 5 is the large stickers. And then, make sure you don't make the mistake of putting over 4. Remember, it's a total amount, so 5 plus 4, which is equal to 9. So write down the fraction of Ewan's stickers that are large stickers, 5 over 9. And then the final part, part D, says write the ratio 5 to 4 in the form n to 1. So essentially, that means we need to get 4 to 1. How do we get 4 to 1? How we do that is by dividing by 4. So we divide this by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is equal to 1. Whatever we do to one side of a ratio, what do we have to do to the other? The same thing. So we divide this side by 4. We divide this side by 4. Sometimes people know what this is in their head. If you don't, remember, you can use the bus stop method. Remember, so your divisor, so we're saying how many 4s go into 5. So 4 goes on the outside, 5 goes on the inside. And then, so obviously, how many 4s go into 5? 1, but we have a remainder. So that means we need to put a decimal point and put a 0 here. We then carry the 1 over. How many 4s can go into 10? It would be 2. Again, we have a remainder. So again, we have to put a 0 here. What's our remainder? 2. How many 4s go into 20? 5. Wherever we put our decimal point, we just need to put it straight up here. In which case, it would be 1.25. Again, you might have just known that, but just in case you don't, always use your methods that you know, in which case here, use the bus stop method. So, write the ratio 5 to 4 in the form n to 1. It would be 1.25 to 1. Fantastic. Again, if anyone has any questions, please leave them in the comments. Also, if any of these topics have been difficult, if you struggled with any of them, make sure to take a screenshot of the question or something and then share it with your personal tutor, and they can go over it in more detail, the topic in more detail with you. Again, we could spend 7 minutes on that question, as a total is worth 7 marks. Okay, fantastic. So, as there's no questions, if we move on to question number 10, and this one is about reflections on a mirror line. So, question number 10 says, on the grid, reflect the shaded shape in the mirror line. So remember, a mirror line is where we need to reflect it to and from. So we go to the mirror line and from the mirror line. Remember, how we reflect is we take our point. So we're going to take the bottom right point first. So we count to the mirror line. So it's 1 square to the mirror line. So it's 1 square from the mirror line. So that point would be here. And we do that for all the points. All the points we have, we do the same thing. So we take the bottom left point. We count to the mirror line. So 1 again, we count from the mirror line, which is 1. Perfect. We then take this point, we go to the mirror line, 1, 2, from the mirror line, 1, 2. And finally, we take this point up here, we go to the mirror line, 1, 2, 3, from the mirror line, 1, 2, 3. So then we basically just connect the dots like so, and then to do our our diagonal lines, I will just use the line tool, like so, and like so. And that is our reflected shape. Remember, whenever you're reflecting a shape, it should look different to what it started off as. So as you can see, this one's flipped upside down. So it should always look slightly different. If it ever's looking exactly the same, then you probably haven't reflected it and instead you've translated it. So make sure we always remember reflected is to the mirror line, from the mirror line, and the shape should change. Is its appearance. It shouldn't get any bigger or any smaller or anything like that. It should just change its overall, basically, so it should rotate to some degree. It should rotate. If then we look at part B, so that was worth 2 marks. There is also a part B where it says write down the equation of the mirror line. So the equation of the mirror line is obviously here, and remember, when it's a horizontal line, it's for y. When it's a vertical line, it's for x. So here it's a horizontal line, in which case we look at the number 1, so y is equal to 1. Remember, the reason why that is because no matter where you go along this line, if you're at here, the coordinates of this point is -4, 1. As you see, y is 1. And even if you go up here, x is 5, but y is still 1. So as you can see, x changes, but y stays as 1 no matter where you go on that line. Fantastic. Again, does anyone have any questions there at all? If you have any questions, put them in the comments. We'll give people just 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds just to ask. Again, that's worth 3 marks, total of 3 marks. 3 marks, total of 3 minutes you can spend on that question. You should roughly spend 2 minutes on the first part, 1 minute on the second part. Again, if you can do it faster, that's even better. Okay, fantastic. So, moving on to question number 11. I think we're around a quarter, if not nearly a halfway through the paper now. We've only been on it for around 25-30 minutes, so we're on very good speed right now. So, if we look at question number 11, it's a two-way table. And it says, 500 people were asked what type of film they liked best. We've got these different genres. We've got different adults and children. So it says 200 out of the 500 people were adults. So we go to the adults, we go to the total, and straight away we put 280 here. Because what we see is they specifically tell us, always in two-way tables, they're going to specifically tell you bits of information. In which case, a bit of information here is that 280 people were adults. The next part is it says 100 of the adults said they liked action films the best. So we go to adults, we go to action, and we put in 100. The next bit of information, 80 of the children said they liked thriller films best. We go children, we go thriller, and we go 80. If then we look at the next part, it says 100 of the people said they liked action films best. So 150. Again, we're on total, we're on action, and it says 150. So 150 here, because it says action and total. Then finally it says 200 of the people who said they liked 200 of people said they liked comedy films best. We go to comedy, we go to total, and we put 200 in here. So those are the bits of information that are specifically given to you. They're specifically given to you, so you can just fill out the two-way table there. That would get you 1 mark. To then get your 3 marks on this question, you have to fill out the remaining gaps. And remember, we add across and we add down. For example, the easiest one to do first is action. Basically, we have 100 plus something is equal to 150. In which case, you should know that 100 plus 50 is equal to 150. We then look at other places where we can fill out the information. If we look in the total, for example, we have a total of 500. We know there's 280 adults. So then we've got to think, okay, how many children would that be? That would leave 220 children. Because what we'd do is 200 plus 220 would be equal to 500. We can also work backwards as well. So what we can say is 220 minus 50 minus 80 would give us the comedy children part. So first of all, we can do 80 plus 50. So if we did 80 plus 50, you should know that that is equal to 130. What we can then do is 220. Again, you can use this bit of room. They've given you a little bit of room here, so you can use it for workings. We would do 220 minus 130, so the total minus this to give us what the children would be. So 220 minus 130 is equal, and again, you should know that this would be 90. Again, if you're struggling at all with that, use the column method as it lays it out a little bit easier. But we know the children are 90. You should then know what the adults are, because adults plus children. So in the comedy section, adults plus the children is equal to 200. So this would be 110. We then look. The next one we can fill out is the thriller. And we could either fill out this bottom part or this top part. If we do this top part, we can look. Because 110 plus 100 plus thriller would equal 280. So if we look, 110 plus 100 is equal to 210. What we then do is we then do 280 minus 210, which you should know leaves us with 70. And then the final box to fill out is the thriller total, and all we do is do 80 plus 70, which you should know would be 150. And then, just to double check your answer, these bottom three, when we add these bottom three up, they should be equal to 500. 150 plus 150 is 300, plus 200 would be a total of 500. Okay, fantastic. So that one took a little bit longer, but again, you're given 3 minutes for that question. You should be able to complete it in 3 minutes. And then there is a part B as well. And it says, one of these 500 people, so out of all the people, is chosen at random. Find the probability that this person is an adult who said they liked action films the best. Straight away, here we do a fraction. It says, find the probability that the person is an adult who liked action films best. We go to adult, we go to action, and as we can see, total there is 100. So we put 100 in here. On the denominator, we put, as it was one of the 500 people chosen at random, it was out of everyone. Remember, on the denominator, we put the total amount, which would be 500. Here, they don't ask us to simplify anything, so we can leave it as 100 over 500. Or if you know how to simplify it, you can also put 1 over 5, because you're dividing both top and bottom by 100. But it's fine to leave it as 100 over 500, because they haven't asked you to simplify this. So it's totally fine to put 100 over 500. Again, that one was worth 5 marks, so a total of 5 minutes to spend on that question. Does anyone have any questions? If you have any questions, remember to just put them in the comments. And again, if something is hard or there's a topic that's come up which you found tricky, make sure to try and remember the topics, take a screenshot of it if you need to, and then try and maybe go through with your personal tutor in your lessons. If we look at the next question then, the next question is an explaining question, because it says, Ollie was asked to work out 5 minus 3 times 4. Ollie wrote 5 minus 3 is equal to 2. He then wrote 2 times 4. Explain what is wrong with Ollie's method. And you should know this. And what the problem is here, you should be saying to your screens right now, is that he's not done BIDMAS. So Ollie, has not used BIDMAS. The multiplication comes first. And that's how we would answer that question. So Ollie has not used BIDMAS. As we can see here, Ollie has not used BIDMAS because he's done the minusing before the multiplication. Whereas if we look at BIDMAS, it's brackets, indices, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So that's the problem there. Ollie has not used BIDMAS. The multiplication comes first. That's an explaining question. Very good. Moving on to the next question, we have a number machine question. We have two types of questions here. There's always two types of questions they ask you in number machines. The first one says, here is a number machines. Input plus 5 divided by 2, output. It says, find the output when the input is 11. So the input is 11. We then do 11 plus 5. What's 11 plus 5? That would be 16. Divided by 2. 16 divided by 2 would be equal to 8. So find out the output when the input is 11. The output would be 8. Remember, you just follow the number machine along. Plus 5 first, divide 2 after. We then always practically have part B for number machines as well. And it's when you go the other way. And it says, here is a different number machine. It says when the input is 10. So it says when the input is 10, the output is 28. Complete the number machine. So the easiest way to do this question, so some people would probably do it this way and try and figure out what we plus minus, but remember you can also multiply and divide here. So that's going to be harder rather than going the opposite way and going back this way. And remember, when you go back the other way, you do the opposite to what's happening. So here we would do 28 divided by 4. So here it says times 4, so we do the opposite and we divide by 4. 28 divided by 4, you should know would be 7. Then all we have to do is look at the input. The input's 10, we go to 7. So obviously here we would minus 3. You can also do the other way again and say 7, again the opposite, so 7 plus 3. So here it would be plus 3. But again, you're doing the opposite because you're going the other way. So then you put this as a minus. So the number machine is 10, and the number machine is minus 3. Essentially, just to complete the number machine, we substitute in minus 3 into that box because 10 minus 3 is equal to 7. 7 times 4 is equal to 28. Fantastic. Again, does anyone have any questions on number machines? Again, if you find number machines a difficult concept, ask your tutor in one of your lessons to maybe go over it in a bit more detail, because sometimes they can be a little bit more confusing, but overall that's the general type of question we get for number machines. Again, 4 marks, you can spend roughly 4 minutes on that question. Moving on to question number 14. We're starting to get a bit more hard now. The questions are starting to come a little bit harder. I think there's a total of 26 questions on this paper. We're starting to get to a harder questions now. So this question says, here is a cuboid of length 10 centimeters and a width of 4 centimeters. 10, 4, and in height. And it says the cuboid has a volume of 200 centimeters cubed. Remember, volume is always in cubed. And volume is the inside of a 3D shape. And it says work out the height of the cuboid. Obviously, we only have the height here. We know it's 10 and 4, but we don't know what the height is. How do we do that? So remember, to calculate the volume, if we write out the formula, is equal to the cross section times by the height. In which case, the cross section is the shape usually at the bottom, in this case, which is 10, which is like a rectangle, because this would extend to here, then it would come across to here as it's a cuboid. And as we can see, it's 10 and 4. So that means the volume, which we know is 200, so if we substitute some numbers in now, we know the volume is 200 centimeters cubed. The cross section is equal to 10 times 4, is basically the area. So the cross section is 10, well, it will be 40 in a second, but let's not jump a step. Let's do 10 times 4. And then we times that by the height. And when we would, if we was to times it by the height, then we would get 200. Anyway, the next step would be to do 10 times 4, which would be 40. So what we can say is we can say 40h is equal to 200 centimeter cubed. Then, what's the final thing? We know 40h is equal to 200 centimeter cubed. We can either think what times by 40 is equal to 200, or divide each side by 40. So we divide each side by 40, divide this side by 40, divide this side by 40. Remember, as we have a zeros, we can cancel out zeros. So it turns out as 20 divided by 4, how many 4s go into 25? So 20 divided by 4 would be equal to 5. So that means the height is 5. Again, you can check that because what you can do is you can do 10 times 4 times 5, which would be equal to 200. Fantastic. A little bit of a harder one there. Again, we have a little bit of a harder part B as well, which is worth 3 marks. And it says, here is a different cuboid. Work out the total surface area of this cuboid. Remember, what is surface area? Surface area of a 3D shape is around the outside of the shape. So it's all the way around the outside. So it's here, it's the back here, it's the front here, it's the sides, it's the top and the bottom. And if we look here, we have 3 sets of sides, essentially. We have the bottom set, which as we can see is 6 and 5. And remember, this isn't just the bottom, this is also the top. This is also the top. So this is the bottom dash the top. So if we calculate the area of this rectangle, obviously it's a rectangle, we would do 6 times 5, which would be equal to 30 centimeters squared. But that would just be for the bottom, for example. So to get for the top as well, we would multiply that by 2. 30 times 2 would be equal to 60 centimeters squared. Okay, that's the top and bottom done. We now have the front and back, for example. So if we look at the front and back, again, it's 6 centimeters, but now it's 3. So it's 6 and 3. Again, what we do is we do 6 times 3. You should know 6 times 3, 6, 12, 18. 18 centimeters squared. Times it by 2, which would be equal to 36 centimeters squared. Fantastic. Then you should know what we're going to do to finish off with. We're going to do the left and the right. So this side over here and this side over here. So this side over there looks a little bit more like this. Again, what we do is, if I just put 6 up here for this one, just so it's okay. So again, we look at this and it's the last 2, which is 3 and 5. So we do 3 times 5. What's 3 times 5? Should be a little bit simpler. That's 15 centimeters squared. Plus, times by 2, remember, because we need to do double it, which would be equal to 30 centimeters squared. And now, what do we do at the end? We have the individual areas. So to get the total surface area, which is what this question is asking for, we add them all together. So we do 60 plus 36 plus 30. The easiest way would probably do 60 plus 30, which is 90, plus another 30 to 90, which would be 120, plus 6, which would be 126 centimeters squared. If you need to use the column method, put 60, 36, and 30 in the column, and then add it up together. But that would get us 126 centimeters squared. And that's how we find the surface area and the volume of a cuboid. Does anyone have any questions? That was a slightly more difficult topic. So if anyone has any questions, leave them in the comments. If you find this topic a little bit harder, again, try to ask your personal tutor to go through it with you in a bit more detail, because it is a little bit more of a harder topic. But if no one has any questions, we can move on to question number 15, which is factorizing. Can we remember what factorizing is? Factorizing, remember, is all about putting something back into brackets. So it's been expanded from a bracket and we need to put it back into a bracket. So how do we put 6a plus 15 into a bracket? It's going to be a singular bracket because there's something common between these two. And what you might be able to see, something that's common, is the 6 and 15. And what you might be able to see is they're both in the 3 times table. That means we put 3 on the outside of the bracket. We put 3 on the outside. On the inside of the bracket, we think, what do we need to times 3 by to get 6a and to get 15? 3 times 2a would get us 6a, and 3 times 5 would get us 15. So our answer would be 2a plus 5. And that's how we factorize. Always remember, when a question says factorize, remember you have to put it back into brackets. Everything that's common goes on the outside, and then on the inside is what you need to times that commonality by to get the desired outcome. There is also a part B, which is more expanded, and this one says solve for 3y in brackets plus 1 is equal to 28. First thing we need to do here, and the first thing you should be saying to yourself, is we need to expand the bracket first. So we need to do 4 times 3 and 4 times 1. 4 times 3y would be 4 times 3, which would be 12. So that would be 12y plus 4 times 1, which would be 4, is equal to 28. Now what do we have? We have a typical equation. This is a typical equation. So remember, what we need to get is y by itself. So we're going to subtract 4 from each side. Subtract 4. We're going to have 12y is equal to 28 minus 4, which would be 24. Then again, you should be saying what we need to do here, which would be to get y by itself, we need to divide by 12. Divide this side by 12, divide this side by 12. 24 divided by 12 would be equal to 2. So y would be equal to 2. Again here, you can spend roughly 4 minutes answering this question. Again, does anyone have any questions there at all? Okay, fantastic. So the next one, a little bit of a harder question, this one, worth 5 marks. So you can spend 5 minutes on this question. And it says, 1 cup of tea and 1 cup of coffee cost £4.50. 3 cups of tea and 1 cup of coffee cost £8.50. Work out the total cost of 4 cups of tea and 3 cups of coffee. So essentially what we need to do here is work out the cost of a tea and a coffee, and then we can solve it. And hopefully what you're saying to yourself right now is we need to put this into a simultaneous equation. And what we can say is we can say, not 1x, remember we can just write x. So we can say x plus y is equal to 4.5. Actually, what we're going to do, this will be better, is to put the bigger values on the bottom. So we'll put the bigger values on the top, sorry. So we'll say 3x, because 3 cups of tea, plus y, sorry. We're going to put x, so x is equal to tea, and y is equal to coffee. So 3x plus y is equal to £8.50. X plus y is equal to £4.50. Remember, what we're going to try and do first is eliminate either the x's or the y's. Remember, x's is for tea, y is for coffee. So we're going to subtract these from each other to eliminate the y's. So if we subtract these from each other, 3x minus x would be 2x. y minus y, as I said, that gives us 0, so we don't need to put anything. Then we have £8.50 minus £4.50, which would give us £3. You should know that that would give you £3. Because obviously we'd do 50 minus 50, which is basically gives you nothing. But remember that will come down. Oh no, sorry, my bad. It would be £4. That's why you always double check your work. You should have been saying that was £4. Fantastic. Yep, because we do 50 minus 50, which gets us down to £8 and £4. £8 minus £4 is equal to £4. So 2x, so that means 2 t's cost £4. So that means 1t, which would just be x, would be equal to £2. Then what we do is we substitute this back in, and we should know now what y is equal to, because if we look at the first equation, 1 cup of tea, which is £2, and 1 cup of coffee costs £4.50. So that means if the tea costs £2, £2 plus what is equal to £4.50? £2 plus £2.50 is equal to £4.50. And I'll just put it here as well. So this is tea and this is coffee. So to work out the total cost of 4 cups of tea and 3 cups of coffee, we would do 4 times 2 plus 3 times 2.5. So the first part should be fairly simple. 4 times 2, which would be 8, plus 3 times 2.5, a little bit harder. Here what we have to do is, if you need to, write it in the column method. There's no problem at all with writing something in the column method. So times 2.5. If it helps you as well, you can put 3.0, not a problem at all. And then what we can do, 5 times 0 would be 0, 5 times 3 would be 5, carry the 1, 15. 2 times 0 is 0, but we have to put a placeholder, remember, as well. 2 times 3 is 6. In which case, as you can see, we get 0. Make sure we're trying to be as neat as possible, remember. So we get a 0 here, we get a 5 here, and then we get a 7 here. So it would be £7.50. So the total cost would be £8 plus £7.50. Again, you should know that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, £15.50. Fantastic. That was a bit of a harder question. Probably the hardest question so far on this paper, because you have to make your own simultaneous equation and then solve your own simultaneous equation, which is quite a hard thing to do. But hopefully that made sense. Again, if you find this type of question difficult, take a note of it. Remember, it's on the topic of simultaneous equations, and try and go through it in one-to-one session with one of your tutors. Okay. Moving on to question number 17. This says, Gita wants to make 24 litres of green paint. She is going to mix blue paint, yellow paint, white paint in the ratio 4 to 3 to 1. So 4 plus 3 plus 1 is 8. So we have 8 parts. She has. So we know it's 24. So then to get what we need to have of each one, we would do 24 divided by 8. Because that gives us each part, which gives us 3. Okay. So that's what we need for 24. We need 3 times 4, 3 times 3, and 3 times 1, essentially. She has 12 litres of blue paint, 7 litres of yellow, 5 litres of white. Does Gita have enough blue paint, yellow paint, and white paint to make 24 litres of green paint? Let's have a look. So if we go B, Y, and W, if we look, blue paint is 4. 4 times 3 would be equal to 12. Next one is yellow paint, 3. 3 times 3 is equal to 9. As we can see, she has enough blue paint, but she doesn't have enough yellow paint because she has 7 litres, but she needs 9 litres. And in white paint, she needs 3 litres. She has that, so she has 5 litres of white, she has 12 litres of blue, but she doesn't have 7 litres of yellow paint. So we would say no. Our answer would be no, she does not have enough yellow paint. She's 2 litres short. I hope that one makes sense. That was about ratios. Sometimes ratios are a little bit harder. Again, if you do find ratios hard, make sure you flag this question, take it with your tutor to go through in your one-to-one lessons. Fantastic. Very, very good. So, moving on to question number 18 is a division question. As I said, now we're getting to quite hard questions. These ones are quite difficult. We have a decimal question and it says, work out 818.4 divided by 1.2. So this is essentially saying how many 1.2s go into 818.4. Whenever our divisor, because what we're going to use here, you might already be saying it, which is fantastic, is the bus stop method. We're going to use the bus stop method here. However, when the divisor, in which case the 1.2, is a decimal, it's hard. So we're going to get this to a round number by times in by 10, as that gives us 12. And then, to cancel this out, we also need to times the other side by 10. We need to times this side by 10. And as long as we do the same to both sides of the division, it's totally fine. We can multiply or divide it by whatever we want, as long as we do the same to both sides. And as you say this side, again, everything goes up to 1 in the place value. So this would be 8,184. We then do the bus stop method. Now it's going to be a bit more simple because now we have 12 on the outside. We have 8,184 on the inside. And we say, how many 12s can go into 8? 0. Carry the 8 across. How many 12s can go into 81? If we list out our 12 times table, we have 12. And you can write this down as well if you need. So we have 12. We have 24. We have 36. We have 48. We have 60. We have 72. We have 84. As you can see, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. With a remainder, what's the difference between 84 and 81? What's the difference between 72 and 81? Which would be 9. Again, this is a little bit bigger, so from 84 we go to 96. So as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 12s go into 98 with a remainder of 2. How many 12s go into 24? 2. So as you can see, our answer would be 682. I hope that one made sense. Remember, if you ever have your divisor as a decimal, try to get that to a round number by multiplying by 10, by 100, by 1,000, whatever you need to do to get this outside number to be a round whole number. Fantastic. Anyone got any questions there at all? Okay, brilliant. Moving on to question number 19. We're nearly there. I believe there's 24 questions or 26 questions on this paper. So, question number 19 says, the table shows probabilities that a biased dice will land on 3, 4, 5, and on 6. So, the probability is here. It's a biased dice, so remember, biased means it's not the probability, is not the same for all of them, like a usual 6-sided dice. It says, Karim assumes the probabilities that the dice will land on 1 and 2 are the same. So if we look at this, we have 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, and 0.25. That would add up to equal to 0.4, 0.65, 0.7. Remember, on our probability scale, the total probability is always 1. So that means 0.3 needs to be split between these two equally. So on either side, it would be 0.15. I hope that should make sense. Remember, probability scales should add up to 1. We then look. It says, Karim rolls the biased dice 500 times. And it says, assuming Karim is right, work out an estimate for the number of times the dice will land on 2. Essentially, this means we need to calculate what 15%, because remember, we can convert decimals to percentages. So to convert decimals to percentages, we've just put the number, and then we put a percent. And here, we need to do 15% of 500 because that's the total amount of times. So how do we calculate 15% of 100? Remember, the percentages that are easy to find is 10%. What is 10% of a number? 10% of 500 is the same as divided by 10. 500 divided by 10 would be equal to 50. We can then find 5%. Remember, 5% is half of 10%, so it would be half of 50. Half of 50 is 25. If we then add up the percentage, as you can see, 10% plus 5% is equal to 15%. 50 plus 25 is equal to 75. I hope that makes sense. 15, as I said, we convert the decimal to a percentage and do the percentage times by the total amount of, so if we do 15% of 500. There is also a part B, which is an explanation question again, and it says Kareem is wrong. The probability that the dice will land on 2 is greater than the probability of landing on 1. How does this information affect your answer in part A? If the probability that the dice will land on 2 is greater than the probability of landing on 1, it would be, how does this affect your answer in part A? We would say it's an underestimate. It's an underestimate because probability of getting a 2 is actually higher. Because if the probability of it's higher, so for example, if it was 20%, for example, then that would be 100. So if the probability the dice will land on 2 is greater than the probability of landing on 1, that means it will be more probability of landing on 2. That's what we were trying to calculate in part 1, which means it's an underestimate because we use 0.15, whereas it's actually saying it's bigger than 0.15. Again, that was worth 4 marks, so a total of 4 minutes should be spent on that question. Okay, we are very near the end now. We have, if we look, 26 questions, so we're 6 questions away. So, if we look at the next question, it's a mixed number question, and it says, work out 3 and 1 over 2 minus 1 and 1 over 6. A lot of different ways to work out mixed numbers, but the way we're going to do it is convert them into improper fractions and then subtract it like it's normal fractions, and then at the end we're going to convert it back into a mixed number. So to convert 3.5 into a mixed number, we do times the bottom first. You always times the bottom and then add the top. So 3 times 2 would be 6, add 1 would be 7, in which case we'd do 7 over 2 minus. Same for the other side, 1 times 6 plus 1, which would be 7 over 6. Fantastic. So remember, to minus fractions, we always have to get denominator to the same number, common denominator. What's a multiple of 2 and 6? 6. Fantastic. So we can go to 6 to 6. Obviously on the second fraction, nothing changes, so this stays as 7 over 6. However, on the other fraction, as you can see, we've times by 3. What do we do to get from 2 to 6? We times by 3. Do the same to the numerator, 7 times 3, which would be 21. We then equal this to 21 minus 17, which would be 14. 6 stays 6 as the bottom, as the denominator. Then, to convert it back to a mixed number, we say how many times can 6 go into 14? It can go 2 times, so we have a big 2. What's the remainder? So we go 6, 12, so that means the remainder will be 2 over 6. So we can give our answer 2 over 6, or we can also simplify that fraction to 2 and 1 over 3. And we can also simplify like that by dividing the numerator and denominator by 1. Fantastic. Again, if anyone has any questions, put them in the comments. But if we move on to part B now, this is the dividing one. 3 marks, so we can spend a little bit longer on this question. Again, we're going to convert them into improper fractions, and we have to prove on this one. So the first one would be 5 times 4 plus 1, which would be 21 over 4. Divided by 2 times 3 plus 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7 over 3. Dividing fractions, remember we keep the first fraction, we change the sign from a divide to a times, and we flip the last fraction. So essentially we're going to have 21 over 4 times by 3 over 7 equals 2. 21 times 3 would be 63 4 times 7 would be 7, 14, 21, 28. Again, what we say is we now have to show that it's 2 and 1 over 4. So we say, how many times can 28 go into 63? So we go 28. We then go 52. We can't do another one. So we can also simplify this fraction down. So we've got to think of maybe a number that can go into both 63 and 28. If you can think of a number maybe to simplify the fraction down, could also be a way you could do this one. But thinking about that number, it's a hard one to think about. It's a hard one to think about. So we won't do it that way. Instead, we'll say, okay, how many 28s go into 63? Obviously, we know it's 2, right? So we put a big 2. We then look for the remainder. As I said, denominator is going to stay at 28. We then look for the remainder. So we go 28. And after 28, we obviously go 56, right? Because we go 20, 40, 8 plus 8 is 16. What's the difference between 56 and 63? Would be 7. We then have 2. I guess 7 could go into both of these. So we have 2, 7 over 28. We divide both top and bottom by 7. Then as we can see, 7 divided by 7 is 1. 28 divided by 7 is 4. And as you can see, our answer is shown as they like to show it here. And that's how we answer this question here. Fantastic. Again, if you find dividing fractions and mixed numbers difficult, again, try and go through it in the one-to-one lesson with your tutor. Again, we could spend 5 minutes on that question for 5 marks. Moving on, if anyone has any questions, remember always put them in the comments. If we look at the question number 21, it says ABCD is a parallelogram. Remember parallelogram, 2 sets of parallel lines. These lines and these lines. And it says, all angles are measured in degrees. Find an expression in terms of E for the size of angle CAD. So where is angle CAD? Angle CAD is CAD, so it's angle here. And we have to just write we don't have to solve it. We just have to, we don't have to solve it. We just have to write an expression in terms of it, right? So all angles are measured in degrees. So here what we can see is we have angles on, what are these? Parallel lines. So we have angles on parallel lines. And what we have here is an alternate, remember our names? We have an alternate angle. And remember alternate angles are the same. That means these two are the same. So E and E are the same because they're alternate angles. Remember your angles on parallel lines? Those are alternate angles. If we then look, we have 3E, E, and then we have this angle. We know that the total angles in a triangle add up to 180. And so what we could say is if we subtracted these two from this angle, if we subtracted these two from the total angle, it would give us A. So we can also say 180 minus what's 3E plus E? 4E. So we could say 180 minus 4E is equal to CAD. And we just have to write it like that. Remember, we're not trying to solve anything here. We're just writing an expression. Fantastic. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Moving on to question number 22. Again, we're very close to finishing now. A couple of questions left. A car travelled 4.96 miles at an average speed of 30.4 miles per hour. Here it says, work out an estimate, because you're not allowed a calculator, so you're not going to be expected to work out the time here without a calculator. So an estimate. So remember what an estimate is. It's a very kind of like educated guess in a way. So what we do is we round these numbers basically. So 4.69, we round that to 5. 30.4, we round that to 30. Remember our triangle for speed, distance, time. Speed, distance, and time. Work out an estimate for the time taken. So that means time is equal to distance over speed. The distance is 5. The speed is 30. what's 5 divided by 30? 5 divided by 30 is equal to, I guess what you could do is you could do your dividing, because you'll probably see it's going to get you to a decimal. So you do 30, and then you do 5. Because remember, this is how many 30s go into 5. So how many 30s go into 5? Obviously 0. Carry the 5 over. How many 30s go into 50? Which is 1, do you see? What's the remainder? We would get 20 as the remainder here. And then we can kind of go through it in that type of way, if I'm not mistaken. I think this is the correct way to do it. So if we look, a car traveled 5 miles at an average speed of 30 miles per hour. So time is equal to distance over speed. Yep, because obviously we got speed on the bottom, distance on the top. Yep, so this looks good. How many 30s go into 200? So obviously we go 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, which would be 6. Again, what we do is we look for the remainder. So how many 30s go into, it would be 180, so it would be 2 again. So as you can see, it would be 0.1 reoccurring, I guess you could say. 0.16 reoccurring, because what we do is we get 20 again. We keep on getting 20, 20, 20. So it would be 0.16 reoccurring. Okay. And then essentially you just have to convert that into minutes. And essentially this would be equal to 10 minutes, because you would do 0.16 of an hour. 0.16 of an hour would be equal to 10 minutes, because here we're looking for minutes. Here we've got in miles per hour. So to convert 0.16 hours into minutes, it would be 10 minutes. Then we have a part B, which says, in your answer to part A, is your answer to part A an underestimate or overestimate? If we look, we rounded the numerator up and we've rounded the denominator down. So what happens when we do that? So let's just say we round 2 numbers up. So let's just say we had 4 divided by 2, for example. Let's just say that's obviously equal to 2. If we rounded the denominator up to 5, for example, and rounded the numerator down to 1, we get 5. So as you can see, here what we're going to have is an overestimate, because we rounded the numerator up and the denominator down. And that would be our reasoning. It's an overestimate because we rounded the numerator up and the denominator down. If you ever do that, you're going to have an overestimate. Fantastic. So just a couple of questions left now. So question number 23 says, here is a pentagon. Angle A is equal to angle C. So we can say these two are both A. Angle B is 155 degrees. So this is 155 degrees. We then says angle D is 3 times angle C. So angle D is 3 times angle C, which we can also say is just 3A. And it says angle E is 2 times the size of angle C. So again, this would be 2A. Angles in a pentagon add up to 540 degrees. And we need to work out what the size of angle A is. If we look, we can create an equation here, because we have 3A plus 2A plus A plus A. We can simplify that to 3 plus 2, which is 5, 6, 7A plus 155 is equal to 540. What we then do is we subtract 155 from both sides. Subtract 155 from here. Again, this might be a little bit more difficult. So what you would do is you'd use the column method. 540 minus 155. So we can't do 0 minus 5, so you have to take off the 4, change that to a 3, carry the 1, which would give us 5. 3 minus 5, can't do that. Change the 5 to a 4, put the 1 with the 3. 13 minus 5, which would be 8. And then this would be 3. So we have 385. So 7a is equal to 385. To obviously get what a is, we need to divide by 7. So 385 goes under here. 7 goes on the outside. How many 7s go into 3? 0. Carry the 3 over. How many 7s go into 38? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, which would be 5. With a remainder of 3. How many 7 go into 35? 5. So our angle would be 55 degrees. Again, that's worth 4 marks. You can spend a total of 40 minutes on that question. Question number 24 says, the graph shows the volume of water, V, litres in the tank. What does this gradient of the graph represent? Remember, the gradient is the slope of the line. And what this is saying is the time. So it says the volume of water in tank. So it's showing how, it's showing the speed the water goes out the tank. Essentially, we just need to explain what's happening here. As we can see, what's basically happening is the volume's going down and the time's going up. So it's essentially showing how much the volume in litres is going down by for how long it's essentially taken. So what we can say is the speed of the water. What does the gradient represent in this graph? The speed of the water going out of the tank, I guess you can say. Going out of the tank. Fantastic. Again, if you have any questions, feel free. That's just worth 1 mark though. So a quick 1-minute question. And then the final questions, just 2 more questions now. The first one is make W the subject of the formula y is equal to 3w minus 10. Essentially, this means we need to have W is equal to everything else. So what we first have to do here is y is equal to 3w minus 10. First of all, we move the 10 to the other side by adding it. Plus 10, plus 10. We then have y plus 10 is equal to 3w. We need to get w by itself, so we divide by 3. Divide this side by 3. So w is equal to y plus 10 divided by 3. And that's how we, whenever it's rearranging to make something the subject, we need to have that by itself. And the final question on this paper is a quadratic, and it says solve x squared minus 2x minus 15 is equal to 0. So here is a quadratic. So how we're going to solve it? Factorizing. Potentially using the quadratic formula, but if you can factorize, it's always best. So when we're factorizing, there's always a very good thing you can do. You can see on this n number, numbers that multiply to this number. So how can we get to minus 15? We can do 15 times 1 or minus 15. Remember, one of the numbers is going to be a minus. So it's going to be a double bracket. Remember, for quadratic equations, there's always going to be a double bracket. One of them is going to be a plus and one of them is going to be a minus. The bigger number is going to be a minus. How do I know this? Because this number here is a minus. Because remember, we're going to add or subtract these from each other. So that means the bigger number is going to be the minus. How do we get to 15? 5 and 3. The bigger number is 5. So 5 will go with a minus. 3 will go with a plus. X on both sides. And then, watch out. This one says equal to 0. So we have to do the opposites for the value. So x is equal to 5 or x is equal to minus 3. Always make sure when it's equal to 0, the values you do the opposites. And fantastic. So that is the paper complete. So that is the walkthrough on that paper. So that was all 80 marks. As mentioned, we took there an hour and 20 minutes. As I said, around a minute a mark, 80 minutes we just took there. So that means we would have 2 minutes Sorry, that means we'd have 10 minutes to go back through now, check any answers we did, and then can double check any questions we didn't quite get, and it gives us time to go back at the end. But we can finish there now. We've finished the paper. Thank you for everyone for joining. I hope you found this helpful. As mentioned, if there was any topics which you found a little bit more difficult, try and go through it with your tutor. Try to talk to them about the topic, and have a nice rest of your weekend.